morning to Annie and nearly good afternoon to the rest of the colleagues. Welcome to the first community of practice that we have. We are very privileged to have Annie with us for the next, over the next 8 weeks, every second week. So thank you for being willing to stand up so early. It's really a challenge for you, but I think it's a good time for us to attend during the middle of the day. I will be recording this session and I will share it with everyone after the session because there's a number of people that said they couldn't attend today. So over to you. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Martina, and good morning, everyone. Almost good afternoon. I'm here on the East Coast in Connecticut, so it's just after 5:30 in the morning, which I mentioned to Martina. I'm a morning person, so I much prefer this versus a 10 p.m. meeting, so I'm really excited to be with you all in this space. As a brief kind of background and introduction, my name is Annie Johnson. I am the director in the Office of Community Engagement at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I should also kind of mention my connection to South Africa is brief but substantial for me, where I spent a semester at Stellenbosch University during my undergraduate year and kind of help shape my international and global service learning focus. So I'm excited to kind of reconnect with colleagues and talk about some of the work that's being done on the ground. So Sacred Heart University is a private Catholic four-year liberal arts institution in Connecticut, and we are a lay institution, so we are not under a particular order, which makes it kind of an interesting component of the Catholic connection. And I give that because it helps frame where community engagement is situated at a Catholic university and really adhering to the mission of working alongside our community and recognizing the common good and the dignity of the human person. So that's kind of where I frame our engagement with the community for the institution. I'll also mention that the Community Engagement Office facilitates various professional development opportunities. And so I'm excited to work in some of those resources and feedback loops to our space here. Also recognizing that we have 4 one-hour sessions. So we are going to, and I propose a couple of different structures that we can chat about today, kind of do a surface level look at some of the best practices of community engaged learning, while also spending a little bit of time doing a deeper dive into some of those contents. So what I would like to do, I'm going to share, I'll share my screen in a minute. But in terms of brief introductions, I know we have a number of folks on the call today. I think what we'll do is, if folks are comfortable, there is a box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen where it has 3 dots. I'm going to ask if before your name that's listed on the screen, if you don't mind adding, when it says edit, I think it's rename, if you can choose a number 1, 2, or 3 that will help define your experience or comfort level with community engaged learning. And that's something when you hit the rename button, you can add a 1 if this is something that's still very new. You have limited experience and comfort with teaching community engaged course. 2 is a moderate level of understanding or experience. And number 3 is you're here with kind of more of an advanced understanding, but looking to dive a little bit deeper. And that'll help us coordinate some of these breakout groups accordingly, sometimes to work with colleagues that have similar understandings, but also to kind of diversify those discussion groups. So I'll also allow if there's questions of how to change names or make those adjustments, but that's the right-hand corner. There's a blue box that would have the capacity to change your name, and that would allow us to kind of see where you're at. So again, number 1 for folks that are new to community engaged learning or teaching, Number two, if you have a moderate level of experience and looking to learn a little bit more. And number three, you're advanced and looking to go a little bit deeper. And this will help us assign breakout rooms in just a moment. Wonderful. And if you choose not to, that's totally fine. And we'll put you in kind of as needed. All right, we're seeing a lot of twos, which is great. All right, so for the purpose of our introductions, I'm going to put on the screen, I'll share my screen in just a moment. Here we go. We'll do a quick lightning round. In our breakout groups, we'll have two groups. I'd love for us to take a moment to share a moment of your area of expertise, your reason for joining the community of practice. What are you hoping to get out of these 4 sessions, or the number of sessions that you're able to make too? And your level of experience with community engaged teaching and learning. So is there a course that you're currently preparing? Is there one that you're teaching that includes this community engaged teaching and learning? So again, maybe 30 seconds a participant, just a quick round robin opportunity to get to know one another. And I'll open the rooms and we'll take another 3 or 4 minutes for those introductions. Well, welcome back. I'm sorry if anyone got cut off from introductions, but I do want to make sure that we have enough time to get through some of our larger discussions. But the brief introductions that I was able to sit in on was helpful to help frame kind of the experience of the group and what you're looking to get out of it. And so as a way of introducing kind of the mode for communities of practice, I'd like to kind of give a proposal of where we might take the group over the next couple of sessions. There's 3 framing reflection questions that we use for service learning, which is a type of community engaged learning. And these questions are what, so what, and now what. And so I'm hoping that as a group, we might be able to use these as a way for us moving forward and asking these 3 questions. And so what can help us look at the actual content? So what are the best practices within community engagement? And it'll offer an opportunity for us to dive into a common read that I will share before every session, thinking about what the literature shares for community engagement, also providing various resources that might come up during our discussions. The so what is kind of asking how does it apply to your own teaching craft? So we will provide prompting questions and facilitate some of the discussions to workshop ideas about your course. And then we'll wrap up every session with this now what question. What questions do you still have, and how can we support one another? And so that's a time to allow for some feedback with our colleagues. I do want to recognize that, you know, you are at the beginning of the semester. There are competing demands for your time and energy. And so in terms of expectations, the courses or the workshops themselves will be standalone, where we'll be able to kind of dive into different topics within community engagement. And yet, I'm hoping that over the next couple of sessions, we'll be able to develop a sense of community that at the end of May, when I step out, there's still an opportunity for you all to network and work with one another in future collaborations, and use one another as sounding boards as you're figuring out the next steps for your courses. So I want to start off as a larger group, and feel free to come off of the mute button, but also use the chat if that's something that you'd prefer. 2 questions. How do you personally define community engaged teaching? And what has helped shape this understanding for you? And so again, there's a little bit of information that was provided in the common read. If you were able to take a look at it, great. But also just what is your understanding of it? Having either taught a course, or exploring what that looks like for you right now. So we'll give a few moments here. And again, feel free to come off mute or enter something into the chat. And even if it's 1 or 2 words of something that stands out to you of what constitutes for community engaged learning. Thanks, Lalani. And if we don't have answers at this moment, we'll be able to kind of reflect on them at the end of this workshop and into the next one. I do want to recognize, so in our breakout room number 1, we had a colleague, Eugene, who has been looking for, and Eugene, I apologize, I'm gonna use your sharing as an example, looking to incorporate our community partners as co-creators of knowledge. And I really loved you bringing that to the group, so that it is an opportunity to recognize community voice, and that is truly kind of at the core of the community engaged teaching and learning practice that we'll get into as we go further. So I appreciate that piece of it. And Alani, I love the idea of collaborative nature. That is certainly a huge piece of community engaged learning. So in the interest of time, I'm going to jump forward a little bit here. I'll be able to share a few kind of deep dives into community engaged best practices and what it is, what it's not. Yes, teaching someone to learn collaboratively. Well, I'm sharing my screen here, and it shows kind of the umbrella of community engaged learning practices. What I love about this is that there's not one right way to do community engaged learning. It's along a spectrum. And so on one end, we have volunteering and community service, which you can see, excuse me, from the focus is going to be more service-centered and more focused on the student. Excuse me, on the community partner who is the recipient of the service. On the other end of the spectrum, we have things like internships, practicums, field education sites, that's going to benefit the student for their student learning outcomes. Perhaps it's getting course credit. And service learning kind of falls in the sweet spot in the middle. And I have a personal background within service learning, so that's where my focus will be for the next couple of weeks, but also broadening it to encompass all of these different methods of community engaged learning, recognizing that they're all valuable both to the community and to our students. Folks were asking in the first breakout group, kind of wanting to know a little bit more about community engagement in general. So I'll throw out a couple of kind of best practices that will help frame the next few sessions together. One of the tenets is that the academic credit is for the learning and not for the service. And so students aren't necessarily getting graded on the number of hours that they've done on site or the research or policy that they've helped create. It's truly on the reflection and the learning process of being engaged in the community. And so that kind of leads to that second and third point is that the service is embedded into the course and not as an add-on. And so that helps uphold the academic rigor, because I think service can often be looked at as a soft learning resource. It's not a textbook, it's not a formal exam, but students are learning both the academic and the civic learning objectives during these experiences. Learning objectives should encompass both academic content, but also the community need. And so again, that's pulling in the service component as integrated and not just as an add-on to the course, so that students truly understand the importance and kind of how that's embedded in the course. For faculty that are kind of new to feeling out some of those community partner sites, we'll talk about it in the next session, but thinking about what the criteria is for those community partner organizations. One, kind of what specific content will they be learning at those sites? The activities that the students are doing at those sites should meet the course objectives. So even if they're going to a service agency, they shouldn't necessarily just be doing busy work or admin work. They should be engaging with the community in those spaces. The duration, kind of talking about rather than a one-off practice where they go and they view the service, it should be more sustained throughout the full semester. And really importantly, meeting the needs of the community versus coming in and saying, here's my blueprint model, and this is what I want to implement during this course, but really getting that back and forth from our community partners. Number 5, being able to utilize educationally sound learning strategies. So whether it's classroom discussions or presentations, a journal or paper assignments that help students reflect on this larger experience. One of the challenges is preparing our students for learning in the community. Some of the critiques and challenges of community engaged learning may be that it perpetuates stereotypes or biases because students are going into a community with preconceived notions. And so it's really important for us as educators to provide them with a space to challenge some of those assumptions before they're going out and working with a community, and so that it doesn't perpetuate that cycle. And so that happens in the form of orientation before students are out on site. And we'll again talk about how to best prepare those students for doing that. Often it's a view of the students of, well, this is my classroom time and this is my community time. And it's helpful to kind of bridge that gap and share that the students' learning outcomes are happening across both spaces. The instructor role is often something that is fluid during our community engaged practices. And I'm going to skip ahead to this next slide to show a little bit of kind of what the different roles might look like. We have passive versus active of student engagement, and how involved the instructor might be in the classroom. And so we're really trying to get to that stage 4, where, excuse me, stage 2, where there is an ability for the students to take control of their learning, and the instructor is not necessarily pouring into an empty vessel, but lighting a fire for our students to be able to come into that co-creation of learning. Let's scoot back here. Oops. We often warn educators that to be prepared for changes in the syllabus, and perhaps some changes or even loss of control with student learning outcomes. And this is inherent of working with a community, because there will be shifts during the semester. And as long as those are meeting community partner needs as well as those student learning, that's okay. That's part of community engaged teaching and learning. And then the community responsibility. And so we'll talk about this again when we're thinking about partnership development, is who has a voice in shaping the course. And so being able to maximize the community's role within the course. I'm just going to jump into the chat to see if there's some feedback here. Excellent. Okay. Yep. Yes, and point 8 with being able to be recognized by faculty in the university. And that's a struggle, I think, across the board of what constitutes as being recognized and valued with the promotion and tenure process, or what constitutes a service to the university. And so we'll talk about that as well. So in the reading, we did talk a little, it did talk a little bit about different forms of community engaged courses. And I think when we hear community engagement, we think of that direct service, which is often sometimes the easiest to facilitate. And so that could be students being directly engaged with clients in a variety of kind of social justice themes, whether it's housing insecurity, food insecurity, poverty cycles, environmental justice. And so students can really plug in directly on site. But there's 5 other types of community engaged courses that are interesting to explore, and thinking about, based on the course or the module that you're teaching and your academic area, it might be better suited for research and learning, or maybe it's a policy advocacy project. It could be philanthropy, where the students are engaged in a fundraising assignment. Maybe it's activism, where they're writing to public figures, or supporting social entrepreneurial projects that's incorporating the local economy. And so again, kind of widening the scope of not just plugging students in and expecting that direct service, but some of these other opportunities as well. So I want to pause here, and if there's feedback from folks that maybe have done a variety of these types of community engaged courses, to share out, what has your experience been with any of these types of forms. And again, feel free to come off mute or throw into the chat.
Hi, Annie. I thought maybe I'll come in to share something. I think, I mean, I agree with so many of the points, and I've been talking in the background with Nolo as well, who's running the community engagement with me at the engineering faculty. I think one of the things that one of our biggest challenges is really maintaining relationships at scale. I think our classroom, we have 1,600 students, 350 community projects. So the logistical challenge of making sure they're connected, making sure they get to the right site, doing the right things is almost a full-time job. And I think in our thinking of, and maybe this is half a question, in our thinking of what they might need, I think we've scripted 40 hours of their development can go to reflection and engagement, and 40 hours are actual hours that they need to spend working on site with the partner. Now, there are second years, so we don't necessarily anticipate that they would necessarily have the relational skill set to work collaboratively towards some greater goal. And in some of the projects, we try to link it with projects that are run at postgraduate level, and it filters down to us as we're kind of extra hands to help build things or carry things around. I think in the preparation, I think that's been the biggest challenge in terms of what skill sets, how do we prepare them, how do we know those preparation skills are integrated? And I think we've kind of tried to keep it simple, like teach them active listening through like experiences and responsibility, negotiation, cooperation, giving and receiving feedback, supporting, and so on. But I'm kind of curious within all of this where that would lie, and how does the scale component, the logistical management component, play into that?
Those are great questions, and I'll leave it for a pause in case colleagues want to step in, but I'm happy to jump in a moment. So, Lalani, to kind of, in terms of how it's done, at least at our institution, is providing a online module that we're still building out. We did a pilot run this year of preparation for the community of Bridgeport. And so we operate in a kind of a closed campus, and having students be prepared to take a step into the community, again, breaking down those stereotypes and assumptions before they enter into the community. And so that module is required if they are doing any type of volunteer work, if they are work study students, if they have an internship, or are part of a service learning class. And it's getting to those soft skills that you had mentioned. So reflecting on their own power, privilege, and positionality. And so they're thinking, what are their social identities that are in play when they're out in the community? What are the historical and social implications of the history of the community in relation to our institution? We ask them kind of questions to think about cultural competency. And so where do they fall within the kind of community, again, social identities? And then continually throughout those modules, reflection questions. Your question about maintaining relationships at such a large scale, I don't know if there's an answer, right? It's assuming that students are kind of those advocates and champions while they're out on site, and knowing that once they finish the module, they're not necessarily having that continued involvement with the partner. And so it may take folks from across the university to maintain those relationships, and rather than relying on one particular staff or faculty member to do that. So our university has a community partnership advisory board where we have representation from each college or department that is coming together a few times a semester to provide feedback and say, this is what we're doing. And so we kind of see if we are doubling up on efforts in some of those spaces, because we have a lot of shared community partners for the College of Nursing versus the College of Business, College of Arts and Sciences. And so what are folks doing in each of those areas? And at the same time, bringing in some of those community partner voices to that group and saying, what's working with our partnerships with you, and what's maybe something that we need to modify. So we'll jump ahead here. We'll do that in a moment. There was an activity in the chapter that I provided. And again, we recognize competing priorities. And so we won't necessarily be quizzing if folks have read. But what I would like to do is I'm going to put up on the next slide a few essential elements of community engaged teaching and learning. And what will take a few moments to do is make a few marks next to these elements. And they'll ask you to put a plus sign next to the elements that you feel confident that you can integrate into your course. And maybe you're already doing it or you have plans to do so. We'll put a delta sign or a triangle next to any of the elements that you find confusing or perhaps hard to understand. And then we'll put a star next to elements that are the most challenging, whether you disagree or they're going to be very difficult to implement in your module. So I will flip the slide in just a moment, but those are your three kind of tick marks, and I'll put the instructions in the chat here in a moment. But these are kind of the defined essential elements of community engaged teaching and learning. So I ask that you just take a moment, and then we'll switch back into breakout groups, and we'll ask some kind of questions there. So again, the plus sign for elements that you find are already working well or you feel confident in implementing. The delta or the triangle for ones that you think you just have some questions about, and the star for ones that are going to be rather challenging to implement. And in just a minute, I will open up the breakout rooms for us to regroup with our initial small groups. And I'll ask that as we'll kind of bounce some ideas around of which elements do you feel confident about? And if you have any examples of how you might already be integrating into your course, and which elements are you unsure about and why might they be challenging at this stage? So again, what are ones that you feel confident about and how are you already implementing? And which elements are you unsure about and what might those challenges be? So I will open the breakout rooms again. We encourage you again 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll regroup with a large group. All welcome back. I recognize that we are kind of winding down to our hour together. So again, in the interest of time, I will put up one kind of more slide for reflection questions of kind of next steps to think about our courses. But I also want to open it up for general feedback where we might want to take the direction for our next session. We had some good feedback in breakout group number 1 about there being a mix of both faculty and administrative roles on this call, and so maybe considering different ways of engaging both of those roles. So we can certainly look into that for the following session. But other feedback or questions that you are looking for to make the most of our time and space together. Again, feel free to come off mute or throw anything into the chat. So the slide here, I'm throwing in some potential themes that we use for our year-long faculty development series. Again, these are suggestions, proposals, but I'd love to hear feedback if these will meet your needs, if this is something that you're interested in. Which of these sessions would be helpful for you as you think about the continued growth of your community engaged learning?
I think reflective practice is very important, and I think sometimes everyone is not very clear how to do it or see the value of it. So I think we must concentrate on that definitely.
Great.
Yeah, they are all very interesting, but then coming from our Office of Community Engagement, like I indicated, that we are the professional support staff, and we mainly work around the partnership. So that will be of interest in terms of how do we continue to sustain this partnership, build them in a way that it's beneficial for all of us that are involved in community engagement. Thank you.
Thanks, Eugenie.
And then also, I'm sorry that I see research and publications, because our performance is assessed by research and publication as well as promotion. I think it's one of the most important things to talk about.
Great.
Yeah, from my side, actually, I've just come back from a meeting before I joined this meeting, where we were discussing, the reflective practices or reflective sessions, and it's a very, very important part, but also one of the issues that we were discussing was how to do it in such a manner that one gets sort of authentic responses, that you don't just get a storytelling, oh, I was there, I came back, I saw, but it becomes, more of an authentic, deeper thinking about what happened, and also how one does it. Do you do it in a group session? Or do you just let each and every student do their own write-up and then you mark that? So yeah, so certainly for me, reflective sessions or practices become very important. Thank you.
Thank you. We have some in the chat thinking about long-term relationships with community partners so that the growth for the students and the community group can be experienced. Absolutely. And research. So we have some great feedback. Well, I appreciate the feedback, and I will leave you with one slide here. I know we're just about at our time. But again, for those of you who might already be kind of thinking about the modules that you teach, or kind of making edits to it, considering those questions about the elements, how they might fit into your module. So I'm leaving you with a few reflective questions for your own craft to consider, and maybe that's something that we can use as a stepping stone for our next session. So I'll make a note that I will stick around for a few moments after our time together. If folks have particular questions, if they want to stick around to chat, I will be here. And Martina, I'm available if you wanted to debrief.
Yes, thank you very much, Annie. We appreciate your standing up early in the morning. I think I got very positive feedback on my WhatsApp on this session. Thank you for that. And thank you for your time. And then we are looking forward in 2 weeks' time to see you online again. So people are welcome to leave. I will download the recording and share it with you tonight, because there are some people that apologize and said they couldn't attend now. Thank you very much, Annie.
Thank you, Martina.
Thank you to my colleagues.